Okay, hello everybody. Today we're going to be talking about socialism and communism. Specifically, we're going to be talking about Marxism because there are a lot of different theories about socialism and communism, just like there are a lot of different theories with liberalism. Let's jump right in here. Marx was born in Germany, but however, he spent much of his life in Britain because he was exiled for his criticism of Christianity and also his criticism of the political and economic order at the time. So Karl Marx is living in a time after the American Revolution, after the Industrial Revolution, when liberalism, social contract theory, and everything that goes along with it are really starting not only to become very popular, but very powerful in the world. Many different countries they were beginning to understand governance in a liberal way. So Marx and Engels are living during a time when liberalism is a political reality. It's not a theoretical concept like it was for Hobbes and Locke. They both look around during this historical moment and wonder to themselves, where is the fraternity and equality that liberalism initially promised? Is it that there are still so many poor people who are working very hard to stay alive? So Karl Marx believes in order to understand how we got here, how we got to this particular historical moment, we need to have an understanding of how history progresses in the first place. For Karl Marx, all history can be understood as the history of class struggle. Now, different periods in time, different cultures, different societies, they have all had different classes. Now, for Karl Marx, these classes are determined by what he calls the material conditions. The material conditions are just how that society or culture produces goods and products. So to kind of re-explain that a little bit, the material conditions, the way that products and goods are made in a certain culture or society, determine that society's classes. And our classes determine how we relate and how we produce individually those goods, and also how we relate to one another. For Karl Marx, these different classes have essentially been marked by a master-slave or oppressor and oppressed relationship. Now, there are gradations of this. There are people who are higher in that class structure or in that class order, and people who are lower. He gives the example of the feudal order, for example. A king is much higher than a knight, but a knight is higher than a serf. And the way that we arrived at all these different classes was through the material conditions, through the way that feudalism produced its goods. For Marx and Engels, the essential structure of liberalism and or capitalism is between two classes, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. The bourgeoisie are the owners of what he calls the means of production, the factories, the machines, the land. They are the owners of the goods that we use to produce more goods. The proletariat, on the other hand, don't own the means of production. All they own perhaps is themselves, and the only way that they have to sustain themselves is by renting or selling their labor to the bourgeoisie. And obviously the bourgeoisie take the products of those labor and then sell them at a higher price in order to make profit. That's how they sustain themselves. So the essential difference between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat is the bourgeoisie are the owners, and they sustain themselves via the profit of the labor of the proletariat. And the proletariat are the workers. Now, Karl Marx describes this system, or continues to describe this system, as requiring a marketplace. The mode of production that we have now, the way that we produce goods now, is through that relationship with the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, but also by selling those goods in the marketplace. So according to Karl Marx, this way of producing and distributing goods has within itself the seeds of its own destruction, meaning that inevitably the contradiction, the struggle, the juxtaposition between these two classes is going to lead to its own downfall, just like every class system that came before it. According to Marx, every revolution, every change in the mode of production comes because the oppressed class overthrows the oppressing class. And for Karl Marx, this isn't going to be any different with the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. Marx believes that eventually the proletariat are going to overthrow the bourgeoisie. And in part, it's going to be the bourgeoisie's fault. And it's going to be their fault because they are going to set up the conditions for their overthrow. Let me give you a hypothetical. Let's say it's the Industrial Revolution, things are just getting going, and you're a business person who's got some money, so you go ahead and buy yourself a factory in a small town in Britain somewhere, and you decide that you want this factory to produce shoes. So you hire some workers to help to come in and work the machinery to produce the shoes, and then you take those shoes and you go and sell them on the marketplace in the town. Well, that's all great. That's awesome. We're getting a lot of shoes. People are getting jobs. The owner is profiting. But eventually, the owner is going to run out of people who need to buy his shoes. He's going to need to expand his market. For Karl Marx, the natural propensity of this system is for it to just expand itself. A bourgeoisie owner is not going to be satisfied just creating and selling some shoes for profit to these, this local town. No, the bourgeoisie owner is going to continue to try to add to their profits. And for Karl Marx, this capitalistic, this liberal system is thus far in history the most productive, the best. It is the one that really has just cut all of the classes to their core. We no longer have these really complicated hierarchies. Instead, we've got bourgeoisie and proletariat, and that's because this market expansion, this mode of production is so good. It's so quick. No other time in history have we seen a class revolution that took over with this much force and this much domination. It swept the world in a way that no other class system had before it. So Karl Marx believed that this system, this liberal capitalistic system, was going to eventually come to dominate the entire world. It was going to come to be the predominant way that we produce goods and that we relate to one another. So as this system expands and eventually comes to take over the globe to become the global system for production, the bourgeoisie, for Karl Marx, are going to make some decisions in order to make themselves more profitable. First of all, they're going to try to concentrate the proletariat. They're going to try to move them into cities so that their labor pool and also where they're selling to are located in the same place. Makes sense. They're also going to inevitably, once this really comes to dominate everything, they're going to start cutting the wages because that's a way where they can get more money for themselves. As the bourgeoisie concentrate, educate, and facilitate communication for the proletariat, right? Because they're no longer out in the villages. They're no longer serving under feudal lords and tied to the land. By doing this, the bourgeoisie are creating the conditions for their overthrow. Karl Marx believes that this is inevitability, that eventually the bourgeoisie class is going to try and suppress the wages of its workers because that is a route to make themselves more profitable. When this happens, Karl Marx believes that the proletariat are going to unionize. They're going to use the only power that they have available to them, which is their massive numbers. There's just a mass amount of proletariat, right? In fact, they are the majority of people are the working class. So Karl Marx believes that the proletariat's going to unionize in order to fight back against the suppression of their wages, and that the conditions of being together, being educated, being communicative because of the bourgeoisie is going to allow them to effectively unionize. And then even further down the road, as these unions and these proletariats gain strength and power, they'll eventually just do away with the class that owns everything. And instead, they will create a dictatorship of the proletariat. That is to say, they're going to create a society that is run by the workers. So in this way, the liberal/capitalistic mode of production has its for Karl Marx, has the seeds of its own destruction. Inevitably, Karl Marx believes we're going to see the end of history. Remember, history is described as the struggle between classes. Karl Marx believes when the proletariat revolution happens, when they seize the means of production from the bourgeoisie, then they will effectively be creating a classless society. And Karl Marx believes that this inevitably will also lead to a stateless society. For Karl Marx, a communist society is one where there are no classes, there is no state, and the means of production is owned by, benefited from, and worked by everybody. Now, for Karl Marx, this stateless, classless society, that is a just society. A society where everybody is truly equal and they benefit from the means of production. There's a very famous communist slogan, from each according to their ability, to each according to their need. And basically what that means is you put in what you can, and then you get out of the system what you need. All right, guys, I'm looking forward to hearing your comments. Does this sound like a just society? Is this how we should be determining if our society is just or not, based upon whether the proletariat are being taken care of? And do you believe that this description is accurate? Do you believe that some sort of proletariat unionization or revolution is inevitable? Okay, I look forward to hearing y'all's comments.